The strange rumors, the rain had been falling all night, covering the city in a cold silver mist. Neon lights reflected on the wet streets, and the sound of distant traffic echoed between the tall buildings. Somewhere far below these streets, in the old and forgotten subway tunnels, strange things were happening. People whispered about glowing lights deep underground, and about voices that no one could understand. Most people laughed at these stories, calling them nothing more than urban legends. But not Ethan. Ethan worked as a night maintenance worker for the city's underground transport system, and he had heard enough strange sounds during his shifts to know there was some truth in the rumors. One night, while checking his equipment in a small control room, Ethan noticed something unusual on his scanner. It showed a heat signature deep below the city, far below any area that humans could reach. The shape on the screen was strange, not the size of a machine, not the shape of an animal. It was moving slowly, and there were 3 of them. He leaned closer to the screen, his heart beating faster. He knew the tunnels well, and this part of the map was supposed to be empty. Sealed off years ago, curiosity burned inside him. Maybe it was just faulty equipment, but maybe the stories were true. He decided to check for himself. Grabbing his flashlight, his radio, and a small toolkit, he left the control room and walked into the nearest service tunnel. The tunnel was dark, the air heavy with the smell of damp concrete and rust. Water dripped from overhead pipes, and the sound echoed like slow footsteps behind him. He kept walking, following the direction of the heat signal. As he moved deeper, the tunnel became narrower, the walls closing in. The sound of the city faded until all he could hear was his own breathing. He passed through a locked gate by using his keycard, then squeezed through a narrow gap where the ceiling had partially collapsed. The further he went, the warmer the air felt. It was strange. These tunnels were usually cold, but now it was as if a hidden heater was running somewhere nearby. Suddenly, he heard something, a soft, distant sound. At first, he thought it was the echo of water, but no, it was voices. They were speaking in a smooth, melodic tone, unlike any language he had heard before. It wasn't the harsh sound of radio chatter or the quick tone of human conversation. It was slow, flowing, almost like music. His skin tingled, and he froze in place, listening. The voices seemed to come from far ahead. Somewhere beyond a bend in the tunnel, Ethan moved quietly, his boots making no more noise than a whisper. Every step felt heavier, the air thicker. The tunnel ahead split into 2 paths, one leading to a collapsed maintenance shaft, the other disappearing into complete darkness. His scanner beeped softly, showing the 3 moving shapes ahead. He followed, stepping into the darkness, guided only by the small beam of his flashlight. The floor beneath him became uneven. It no longer felt like concrete, but rough stone. The walls widened into a small cave-like space, and the ceiling dripped with glowing drops of water. It was beautiful and strange at the same time. He crouched low, careful not to make a sound. The voices were louder now. They were definitely real, not an echo, not his imagination. They were calm, almost gentle, but there was something about them that felt powerful. He took another slow step forward, his flashlight sweeping over the stone floor. Then, without warning, the beam of light caught movement. Far ahead, something tall and graceful moved across the cavern. The figure shimmered faintly, as if light was reflecting from its skin. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He turned off his flashlight and crouched lower, hiding behind a pile of old stones. His heart was pounding so hard he thought the sound would give him away. The figures were clearer now. 3 of them. They moved with a strange elegance, their bodies glowing softly in the dim light. Their hair shimmered like liquid silver, and their skin had patterns that pulsed gently. He didn't understand what he was seeing, but he knew this was no human sight. Then, as if sensing his presence, one of the figures turned. Even from a distance, he could see her eyes, glowing deep, calm blue. Ethan froze, his breath shallow. The figure tilted her head slightly. Almost curious, the other 2 paused, their voices stopping. The cavern was silent now. The only sound was the soft drip of water from the ceiling. Ethan knew. He had to make a choice. He could run back the way he came, pretend he never saw this, and live his life as before. Or he could take one step forward and find out the truth behind the strange rumors that had haunted the city for years. His hands trembled, his flashlight still off. He felt the weight of the dark tunnel behind him and the unknown ahead of him. One of the figures took a slow step in his direction, her glowing blue eyes never leaving his face. In that moment, Ethan realized something. Whatever they were, they knew he was there, and they were not afraid, in fact. It almost seemed like they had been expecting him. The hidden chamber. Ethan's heartbeat was loud in his ears as the tall, glowing figure stepped closer. Her movements were slow, almost like she was gliding across the cavern floor. The faint light from her skin reflected on the wet walls, casting strange shapes that seemed to move on their own. The other two figures stayed back, their eyes fixed on him, unblinking, for a long moment. No one spoke, no one moved. Then, without warning, the first figure turned and walked away, her silver hair flowing behind her. The other two followed, their glowing patterns fading slightly as they moved deeper into the cavern. Ethan realized something strange. They were not running from him. They wanted him to follow. It was as if they were leading him somewhere. He hesitated, his instincts screaming that this was dangerous, but curiosity was stronger than fear. Keeping a cautious distance, he followed them through a narrow opening at the far end of the cavern. The opening was barely wide enough for him to squeeze through. On the other side, the air changed instantly, warmer, richer, almost sweet. It didn't smell like any underground space he had been in before. The narrow passage widened suddenly into an enormous underground chamber. Ethan stopped in his tracks, his eyes wide. The ceiling arched high above, covered in glowing vines and strange crystal-like formations. Soft light filled the space, not from lamps or bulbs, but from the plants themselves. The ground was covered in moss that glowed faintly under his boots. Streams of water ran across the floor. Clear and shining, in the center of the chamber stood tall, elegant structures made from smooth white stone. They were shaped like curved shells, their surfaces covered with glowing symbols. The three women moved gracefully toward one of these structures. As they stepped inside, the patterns on the walls lit up brighter, like they were alive. Ethan's breath caught. This was no natural cave. This was a hidden city, or at least the remains of one, deep beneath the human world. From where he stood, he could hear faint humming sounds. It wasn't mechanical. It was like the chamber itself was singing. His eyes wandered over everything, the water, the vines, the strange plants with petals that shimmered like metal. It felt like stepping into another world. One of the women, the tallest, turned to look at him again. Her glowing blue eyes seemed to pierce right through him. She raised her hand slowly, palm open. Ethan didn't know what it meant, but something inside him told him to trust the gesture. He stepped forward carefully, the moss soft under his boots. As he approached, the other two women whispered to each other in that same melodic language. The sound was beautiful, but he couldn't understand a single word. The tallest one finally spoke to him. The tone was calm, almost gentle, even though he didn't understand the words. He felt the meaning. It was like the sound carried an emotion, welcome, but also warning. She gestured for him to come closer to the shell-like structure. Inside, Ethan saw strange devices, small spheres floating in midair, glowing with pale light. They seemed to move on their own, shifting position as if adjusting to his presence. Along the walls, the glowing symbols pulsed softly. It felt alive, as if the whole place was aware of him. Suddenly, one of the floating spheres moved toward him. It hovered just inches from his chest, scanning him with a soft beam of light. He froze, unsure whether to step back or stay still. The blue-eyed woman said something in her language, and the sphere stopped, retreating to its place. Her gaze never left him, as if she was studying his every reaction. Then, without warning, the ground shook slightly. A faint rumble echoed through the chamber. The three women exchanged quick, tense glances. Ethan could see the change in their faces, whatever had happened. It was not good. The tallest woman spoke sharply to the others, and they moved quickly toward another passage on the far side of the chamber. She turned to Ethan, gesturing for him to follow. Her expression now urgent as he followed. Ethan realized the humming sound he had heard earlier had changed. It was now deeper, slower, almost like a warning alarm. The air seemed heavier, the soft light dimmer. They moved quickly through twisting passages lined with more glowing vines. The warmth in the air began to fade, replaced by a chill. At the end of the passage, they stopped in front of a tall arch made from the same smooth white stone. It was covered in unfamiliar markings, and at the center was a strange circular device. One of the women pressed her hand to it, and the markings flared bright white. The arch shimmered, and for a moment, it looked like liquid light was flowing inside it. Before Ethan could ask anything, the blue-eyed woman stepped aside. Letting him see through the arch, what he saw made his heart skip a beat. Through the shimmering light, there was a view of somewhere else entirely. Not another tunnel, not another chamber, but a vast, alien landscape under a green sky. Ethan stared, his mind struggling to understand. The blue-eyed woman looked at him and spoke just one word in clear English. "Home," she said, her voice echoing softly in the chamber. First contact. Ethan's eyes stayed fixed on the strange arch of light. The alien landscape beyond it looked impossible. The sky was a deep green with swirling clouds, and in the distance, strange towers rose like twisted silver trees. The ground shimmered with rivers of light, and huge crystal shapes floated gently in the air. It was beautiful, but also unreal. His mind fought to believe what his eyes were seeing. The blue-eyed woman stepped in front of the arch, and the vision of the alien world faded. The white stone turned dull again, and the glowing markings slowly dimmed. She looked at him for a long time, as if measuring his reaction. Then she spoke in her own melodic language, the sound soft but full of meaning. Ethan didn't understand the words, but he felt something in her tone, a mix of sadness and warning. One of the other women, the smallest of the three, tilted her head and took a step toward him. Her hair shimmered like liquid silver, and her eyes were a bright golden hue. She reached out slowly, her fingers brushing the sleeve of his jacket. Her touch was warmer than a human's. And for a moment, Ethan felt an image in his mind. It was not a word, not a sound, but a picture, a memory that was not his. He saw fire in the green sky, ships falling from orbit, and crowds of her people running toward glowing shelters. It lasted only a second, but it left his heart heavy. Ethan stepped back slightly, his voice low. What was that?" he whispered. The smallest woman didn't answer with words, only a sad smile. The blue-eyed woman spoke again, this time to the tallest of the three. The tallest nodded and walked to one of the glowing walls, touching a pattern. With her palm, the wall shifted, opening like a smooth shell, revealing a room filled with strange objects. Small floating orbs hummed softly, scanning the air. Tables made from smooth stone held devices that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. In the corner, Ethan saw what looked like a star map. Tiny points of light hovered in mid-air, connected by thin glowing lines. Some of the lights were bright, others dim, and some flickered weakly. One of the glowing points pulsed red, and Ethan realized it matched the position of Earth on the map. The blue-eyed woman walked to the map and touched the red point. The star map zoomed in, showing a cluster of ships moving toward it. They were sharp and black, shaped like blades. Even without words, Ethan understood. Something was coming, and it was dangerous. Finally, the blue-eyed woman looked straight at him and spoke in slow, careful English. Her voice was smooth but strange, as if she was shaping the words for the first time. "You are human," she said. Ethan froze, shocked that she could speak his language at all. "Yes, I am," he said quietly. She nodded slowly. "We are not." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Ethan tried to find the right question. But too many fought to escape at once. "Who are you?" he finally asked. His voice steady but soft. The woman placed a hand over her chest, her glowing pattern shifting slightly. "I am Lyria," she said, then gestured to the smallest one. "Cerise," and then to the tallest, "Vera." Her voice grew quieter. "We are the last." Ethan didn't understand. The last of what? Lyria's eyes darkened, and she pointed toward the star map again. "Last of our world," she said, her English breaking slightly. Cerise stepped closer, speaking quickly. In their language, her tone urgent. Lyria listened, then turned back to Ethan. "Your city. Not safe." The words chilled him. He glanced at the map again, the dark blade-like ships, and understood enough to feel fear. "Are they coming here?" he asked. Lyria's answer was short. "Yes." Vera, the tall one, moved toward a curved device near the wall. It projected a ghostly image into the air, a view of the streets above the city. At first it looked normal, people walking, cars moving. Then Ethan saw them, figures among the crowd, wearing human clothes but moving. Wrong. Their posture was too stiff, their eyes too still. Lyria's voice was quiet but firm. "They are already here." Ethan's breath caught. These hunters, these enemies, they were in his city, blending in, watching. He turned to Lyria. "What do they want?" She looked at him for a long time before answering. "Us. And anyone who helps us." The meaning was clear. If he walked away now, he could go back to his life. If he stayed, he would be in danger, hunted just like them. Lyria stepped closer, her glowing eyes never leaving his. "You find us," she said, her voice softer now. "Now. You choose." The chamber was silent except for the slow hum of the glowing plants. Somewhere deep in the tunnels, a faint rumble echoed. Ethan didn't know if it was a passing train or something far worse. The unseen threat. The sound in the distance grew louder. It was not the deep rumble of a train. It was sharper, broken, like metal scraping against stone. Ethan's skin prickled, and he could feel the air change. Lyria turned toward one of the glowing walls. Pressing her palm against it, the wall shifted, becoming transparent like glass, revealing a narrow passage beyond. Through it, faint red lights moved slowly in the dark. They pulsed, not like warning lights, but like the slow blink of eyes. Vera's voice was low and firm in their language. The words came quick, like orders. Cerise moved to the far side of the chamber, pulling out a strange silver rod from a wall. Slot, it unfolded into a long staff, the tip glowing faintly blue. Ethan realized they were preparing for something, or someone. Lyria stepped toward him, her voice urgent. "They are here," she said. Her eyes held no fear, only focus. Ethan glanced at the glowing wall again. The red lights were closer. Now, and with them came the sound of metal feet striking the ground. It echoed in a rhythm, slow, deliberate, hunting. "What are they?" Ethan whispered. Lyria's gaze stayed on the approaching lights. "Hunters," she said. "They do not stop." Her tone made it clear. These were not soldiers in the human sense. These were predators, machines and flesh combined, created for one purpose: to track, to capture, to kill. Vera moved beside Lyria, her tall frame blocking part of the view. She held something in her hand, a curved, silver-bladed weapon that shimmered like it was made of liquid. Cerise, still holding the staff, glanced at Ethan and then pointed toward a narrow tunnel at the far edge of the chamber. "Go," she said in broken English. "Hide." But Ethan didn't move. His instincts screamed to run. But his curiosity and something else, something like loyalty, held him in place. If he left now, they would face whatever was coming. Alone, he had no weapon, no alien technology, but he knew the tunnels. He knew where they narrowed, where the ceilings were weak, places where a wrong step could bring down tons of stone. The red lights were almost at the chamber entrance now. From the shadows, a shape emerged. Tall, thin, moving with unnatural precision. Its body was black and angular, its head shaped like a narrow blade. Where a face should be, there was only a smooth surface of glass-like black. The red light pulsed from within it, glowing brighter as it scanned the room. Two more stepped into view behind it. They moved in perfect unison, their metal-clawed feet making no sound on the stone. Ethan felt a cold weight in his stomach. They were wrong in every way, too still when they stopped, too smooth when they moved. Predators without breath or heartbeat. Lyria raised her hand, the glowing lines on her skin flaring brighter. The air between her and the hunters shimmered. Like heat rising from asphalt, the first hunter paused, tilting its head slightly, as if listening. Then it stepped forward again, unshaken. Vera moved quickly, planting herself between the hunters and the others. Her weapon hummed as it cut through the air, sending faint sparks where it passed. Cerise shifted to the side, trying to flank them. Ethan pressed his back against the wall, scanning the chamber. His eyes caught something, a section of the ceiling where the moss didn't grow. The rock there was cracked, loose. His heart raced as he realized what it meant. If the hunters moved beneath it, he could bring it down, but he would have to get closer to them, dangerously close. The first hunter stepped into the chamber fully. Its head turned toward Lyria, the red light in its face growing brighter. A low vibration filled the air. Like a warning growl, Lyria's voice was calm but firm. "Ethan, now is danger," she said. Her English was broken, but the meaning was clear. Stay back, stay safe. But Ethan had already made his choice. While the hunters focused on the alien women, he slipped along the side wall, keeping in the shadows. His boots made no sound on the moss-covered stone. The cracked section of ceiling loomed above. He pulled the small metal tool from his belt, meant for loosening bolts, but heavy enough to pry stone. He wedged it into a narrow gap and pushed with all his strength. The rock groaned, dust falling into his hair. One of the hunters turned sharply, the red light sweeping over him. Ethan's breath caught, but at that moment, Vera lunged forward, slashing her weapon across the hunter's chest. Sparks burst into the air, and the machine staggered. Ethan used the moment to shove hard. The cracked rock broke loose, and a heavy slab of stone crashed down. It struck one of the hunters, crushing its leg and pinning it to the ground. The sound echoed through the chamber like thunder. The other two hunters froze, scanning the falling debris. Lyria shouted something in her language, and Cerise swung her staff, sending a wave of blue light across the chamber. The energy struck one of the hunters, hurling it back into the wall. The last one retreated slowly, its red light dimming as it stepped back into the tunnel. Silence returned, broken only by the sound of dripping water. Ethan stood, dust in his hair, chest heaving. Lyria stepped toward him, her glowing eyes softer now. "You help," she said quietly. "Now. You are part the dangerous mission." The air in the chamber was still heavy with dust. The broken hunter lay crushed under stone, its red light flickering weakly before fading into darkness. Lyria and Vera checked the damaged walls, their glowing patterns dim. Cerise stood near Ethan, her golden eyes fixed on him with an expression he couldn't read. Finally, Lyria turned to him, her voice quiet but urgent. "Their signal will bring more," she said. "We must hide again." Ethan glanced at the shimmering walls, remembering the strange humming of the cloaking device. "It's not working right, is it?" he asked. Lyria nodded slowly. "Power is low." She pointed toward a small platform in the corner of the chamber. On it sat a cluster of crystal-like shapes connected by silver wires. Some of them glowed faintly, others were completely dark. Vera spoke sharply in their language, her tone edged with frustration. Lyria sighed before turning back to Ethan. "We need energy," she said. "Strong energy. Human source." Ethan's mind worked quickly. He knew the city's underground power grid well. If they needed high output, there was only one place nearby that could give it, the North Sector Power Station. But that was in the heart of the city, crawling with workers, security, and now, possibly the hunters in disguise. You want me to get it? Ethan said slowly. Cerise tilted her head. You know, city. You move quiet. Lyria's gaze locked on his. Without you, we are found. The choice was not really a choice. He couldn't walk away now, not after seeing the hunters and what they could do. He nodded once. All right. Lyria stepped closer, placing the small, smooth disc in his hand. It was cold. To the touch, humming faintly. Carry. Here, she said, pointing to his chest pocket. It will hide you from their scan. But not from eyes. Ethan tucked it away, feeling its faint pulse against his chest. Within minutes, he was climbing back up through the tunnels. The air grew colder as he approached the surface access hatch. When he finally emerged into the night, the city felt different. The streets were quiet, too quiet. Even the neon signs seemed dimmer, their colors bleeding into the wet pavement. The North Sector power station loomed in the distance, a fortress of steel, pipes, and humming machinery. He kept to the shadows, moving through narrow alleys and back streets. Twice, he saw people walking in the distance. At first glance, they looked normal, workers, late-night wanderers, but then he noticed the way they moved. No swing in their arms, no shift in their shoulders. Just straight, mechanical steps. His chest tightened. Hunters in disguise. The closer he got to the power station, the more he saw them. Some stood perfectly still at street corners, as if waiting for something unseen. Others walked in slow, steady loops around the block. He avoided their paths, ducking into side passages whenever their heads turned. Reaching the station's outer fence, he crouched low behind a row of rusted barrels. The hum of the transformers filled the air. Inside, bright floodlights swept across the yard in slow arcs. He spotted a service gate at the far end, half hidden behind stacked crates. It had an old maintenance lock, one he could pick easily with his tools. He moved fast, slipping from cover to cover. When the floodlight passed overhead, he pressed himself against cold metal, holding his breath. Finally, he reached the gate and worked the lock quietly. The click of it opening was barely audible over the low roar of machinery. Inside, the station smelled of oil and ozone. Pipes hissed, and steam drifted from vents in the ground. He navigated through narrow walkways until he reached the heart of the station, the main power control room. Through the glass windows, he saw the power cells they needed. Each one was the size of a small suitcase. Glowing with a steady blue light, he stepped inside, quickly locating the release clamps, but just as he lifted the first power cell from its dock, he heard it. A slow, rhythmic tapping on the metal floor behind him. He froze, heart pounding. Turning his head slightly, he caught sight of a shadow stretching across the far wall. Long, thin, and inhuman, the tapping grew louder as it approached. He could feel the faint vibration through the soles of his boots. Ethan's grip tightened on the power cell. His mind screamed to run, but the alien disc in his pocket pulsed harder. It was as if it knew the danger was close. The shadow reached the edge of the doorway. Then, a head leaned into view, smooth black surface, red light glowing faintly from within. A hunter. Ethan's pulse roared in his ears. The hunter stepped into the room, scanning slowly, its head tilted. The red light sweeping across the walls. It paused, the light passing directly over him. The disc in his pocket pulsed again, 1, 2, 3 times, and the red light moved on. The hunter turned toward the far side of the room, scanning the control panels. Ethan knew this was his only chance. He slipped quietly out through the side door, hugging the shadows. By the time the hunter turned back, the room was empty. Minutes later, he was back at the service gate, power cell strapped to his back. He didn't breathe fully until the hum of the station was far behind him and the safety of the tunnel surrounded him again. When he returned to the hidden chamber, Lyria's eyes brightened at the sight of the glowing cell. "You live," she said softly, relief in her voice. But Ethan only shook his head. "They know something," he said. "They're looking for me now." The battle below, the power cell pulsed with a steady blue glow as Lyria connected it to the cloaking device. Silver wires twisted around the crystal edges, and faint streams of light spread across the chamber walls. The hum returned, low and deep, like the sound of the ocean from far away. Ethan watched as the strange patterns on the walls brightened, shifting in slow waves. Cerise smiled faintly. "We hide again," she said in her soft, broken English. But the moment of relief did not last. A sharp, metallic sound echoed from somewhere deep in the tunnels. It was followed by another, and another, heavy steps deliberate. Vera's head snapped toward the sound, her glowing markings flaring brighter. "They come," she said. The words clear and sharp. Lyria moved quickly, touching her hand to the wall. A section of it shifted, revealing a hidden corridor behind layers of moss and stone. "Go," she told Ethan. But this time her voice carried hesitation. Ethan shook his head. Not without helping. Vera gave him a long look, then tossed him a short, curved blade, its surface like liquid metal. It was lighter than he expected, humming faintly in his grip. The metallic footsteps grew louder, joined by a faint electric hum. Then the red lights appeared in the tunnel. 1, then 2, then 5. The hunters moved forward in perfect formation, their heads tilting in unison, the moment they stepped into the chamber's light. Their claws unfolded with a sharp snap. Vera moved first. A blur of silver and blue. Her blade clashed with the lead hunter's arm, sparks flying in all directions. The sound was like tearing steel. Cerise swung her glowing staff in a wide arc, sending a wave of blue light that slammed into 2 hunters, throwing them back into the tunnel wall. The air filled with the sharp scent of burning metal. Ethan's pulse thundered in his ears. He kept to the side, watching for an opening. One hunter broke from the group, circling toward Lyria and the power cell. Ethan stepped into its path, raising the curved blade. The hunter's red light fixed on him, and it lunged. Ethan ducked low, the claws swiping just above his head. He slashed upward, the alien blade cutting through one of its legs with shocking ease. The creature staggered but didn't fall, its movements jerky but still fast. Behind him, the fight grew more intense. Vera fought 2 hunters at once, her strikes quick and precise. Cerise moved like liquid light, her staff spinning in a blur. Every hit from her weapon sent ripples of blue energy through the hunter's black armor. But more of them were pouring in, their footsteps like war drums against the stone floor. Ethan spotted a cluster of large, unstable rocks in the ceiling above the tunnel entrance. If he could bring it down, it might block the reinforcements. He shouted to Lyria, pointing upward. She understood instantly, placing her palm to the ground. The glowing lines on her skin flared to blinding white. The ground trembled beneath Ethan's feet, cracks formed in the ceiling. And with a thunderous crash, the rocks fell, sealing the tunnel in a cloud of dust and debris. The sound disoriented the hunters still inside. Vera took the chance to drive her blade deep into the chest of one. The creature jerked violently, the red light in its head flickering before fading to black. Cerise swung her staff one final time, shattering the head of another hunter into fragments of dark glass. When the last movement stopped, the chamber was filled with silence. Only the slow hum of the cloaking device remained. A secret kept. The dust slowly settled over the silent chamber. Broken pieces of the hunters lay scattered across the moss-covered floor, their red lights forever dark. The sharp scent of burned metal lingered in the air, mixing with the faint sweetness of the glowing plants. Ethan stood still, the curved blade hanging loosely in his hand. His arms ached. His chest rose and fell with every heavy breath. He could still feel the vibration of the fight in his bones. Lyria stepped toward the power cell, checking the connections. The soft blue glow pulsed steadily now, casting gentle light over her face. The cloaking device hummed stronger than before. The walls shimmered like ripples on water, the hidden chamber slowly vanishing into invisibility. "They cannot find us for now," she said softly, her voice calm but tired. Vera knelt near the sealed tunnel, her sharp eyes scanning the fallen rock. "They will return," she said quietly. "Maybe not soon, but they will." Her tone carried no fear, only certainty. Cerise moved to Ethan's side, her golden eyes studying him. "You stay," she said, not as a question, but as if she already knew the answer. Ethan looked at her, then at the others. He thought about the world above, the streets filled with people who had no idea what hunted below their feet. If he told anyone, they would call him insane. If he tried to prove it, the hunters would kill him before he could, and if he walked away, he would never be able to live with himself. "You saved me," he said quietly. "Now I save you." The words were simple, but they carried a promise. Lyria stepped closer, her glowing blue eyes locking on his. She reached into a pouch on her side and pulled out a small crystal. It was no bigger than a coin, but it pulsed with light that seemed to come from inside the stone itself. She placed it gently into his palm. "This is key," she said. "One day, you will need it, and we will find you." The crystal was warm in his hand, the light inside it beating in slow rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. He closed his fingers around it, feeling its weight, not heavy, but important. Cerise gave a small smile. "Now, you are part of us." Vera said nothing, but her gaze softened, and she gave him a single nod. It was the closest thing to respect she had shown anyone. Ethan helped them gather what they could from the broken hunters, pieces of armor, wires, and strange black metal that shimmered when touched. "These help us fight," Vera explained. Every movement was done with silent urgency. They all knew the hunters might be searching for another way in. When the work was done, Lyria placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You must go." "Above," she said. "No one must see you here." Ethan understood. The cloaking field was rising again, slowly erasing the chamber from sight. If he stayed too long, he might not find his way back out. He walked to the narrow passage that led to the upper tunnels. Before stepping inside, he turned back. The three alien women stood together, their glowing patterns shifting in unison. They looked otherworldly, beautiful, and dangerous all at once. For a moment, Ethan felt the strange certainty that this was not the end, only the beginning. The journey back through the tunnels felt longer than before. His flashlight cut through the darkness, but his thoughts were elsewhere. Every sound, every echo made him wonder if the hunters were already watching him. When he finally reached the surface, the cold night air hit his face. The city looked exactly the same. Neon lights reflecting off wet streets, cars passing, people walking, but he knew it was not the same at all. In his pocket, the crystal pulsed once. He stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, feeling the faint warmth against his palm. Somewhere beneath him, deep under the city, three alien women were hiding from an enemy that would never stop. And now, their fight was his fight too. Ethan turned toward the dark street ahead. The rain had started again, falling in a soft, steady rhythm. He pulled his jacket tighter, his mind already planning he would keep their secret, no matter what. But in the back of his mind, he could not shake one thought. If the hunters were here, what else might be? The crystal pulsed again, brighter this time. Ethan took a deep breath and kept walking into the night. The city slept, but somewhere, something was already awake.